Hey, I'm Sean Russell. I am the Cowtownbanker. I want to talk to you about multi-generational housing. Some people will call them in-law suites. Other people lately are basically there's one of the highest demands right now in growth for the construction world or people building, and probably most underserved. It seems to be in multi-generational housing. This is a real challenge for us in America. We don't have a lot of great infrastructure for growing old with some dignity. So a lot of people are looking for new solutions. One of them has been multi-generational housing. And I want to say this, if you know anybody that is thinking about this is a long process. It's got more challenges than it is going to be, than you're going to realize. But I would beg of you to pass along to your family and friends that before they go buy land, before you invest in plans, before you do anything like that, that you talk to whatever bank you're going to work with. Okay, again, I'm a banker that can work in Texas and Oklahoma, but I have a footprint that is local. I have local appraisers, local inspectors. You need that infrastructure to be able to do these type of loans. One of the other videos, I do go into options for 1 or 2 time close loans, which is essentially the way you finance these homes. Again, if you are financing them, there can be a lot of challenges. And let me start with the first one. All these loans are, in all bank loans, all mortgage loans are built on the premise of equity. We can do loans sometimes with as little as 5% down. If the house build was $800,000 to $850,000 in Texas, for instance, sometimes you can get away with having as little as 5% down. So a lot of my customers that are doing multi-generational housing, they already have a big piece of land picked out or family land they want to build on. That equity in the land could equate or should equate to some, if not all, of the down payment required, so that as a bank we're not lending over our maximums, which again might be as little as 5% equity that you need. If you get into the jumbo world of like up to 1.5 million, we might deal with only 15%, or we might need more like 15% equity. But the important thing is that you have those conversations with your banker. Now, the biggest challenge to multi-generational housing is most of the customers that are doing or having to do these as self-builds. If they're building multiple on their own land, especially if it's in unincorporated areas, it's hard enough finding a builder for a regular house, but especially for a build like 2 master suites, a lot of square footage, larger garage spaces, things like that typically come with these. The challenge that you're going to have generally, or the biggest challenge, has to do with the appraisal itself. And let me tell you why. A lot of people come at it and they're like, well, I'm building a 4,000 square foot house. I'm using 200 a foot because that's what, pricing is in that area for even custom homes. So we're going to be, well within tolerance, right? And either the builder's plans are just too expensive and you decide to self-build, which again, I talk about in another video where you can, act as your own GC if you want to give that a try. But the challenge is that when you're going and you get your plans and everything like that, you want to get your appraisal as soon as possible before you've spent any more money than you have to. Because if you're trying to do this with a minimum down payment of 5 to 10%, the problem you're going to have is that the appraisal is likely going to come up short. So again, let's say that in your area where you're looking to build, custom homes are typically a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, or even a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, all kind of stuff. People will tend to look, including sometimes builders, at the price per square foot. They know they're within that square footage footprint, and it looks like it's going to be easy, but it is not. There's 2 things. If you're building one structure and everything's going to be under 1 air-conditioned square footage, so maybe a house with 2 master suites, sometimes that's a little easier to get the appraisal to work and get numbers to work than if you have a separate structure. If you have a separate structure, that price per square foot is not the same. And the appraisers are required by law to only count the square footage that is part of the continuous under roof air-conditioned square footage. So for instance, if you have a house, the main house is going to be 3,500 square foot, and then the in-law suite, as we often will call them, outside detached, is going to be another 1,500 square foot. You might be thinking, well, that's a total of 5,000 square feet. So my price per square foot needs to stay under this. That building outside that you're going to build, that separate structure, is not going to appraise for what it's going to cost you. any more than pools or other outbuildings. They just don't appraise for what they're going to cost to build. Okay, so you need to be prepared for that. So this is what the project might look like. Let's say that all in all, your cost is going to be $1 million to build essentially 5,000 square foot of housing, right? It likely is going to appraise for the outbuilding, the extra, anything unique you're putting on the house is likely to appraise for more like 50 cents on the dollar. So let's say the outbuilding is going to cost $250,000 to build. It's probably going to appraise for just over $100,000. The reason for that is because as the appraisers go out and look, they have to find a house that has a similar structure, an outbuilding or an in-law suite or guest quarters type structure. When people build these, just like pools, they stay in their house almost twice as long, if not longer, on multi-generational housing than other people might. There's several reasons for that. One of them is it's hard to turn and sell that house and to make your money back on that. It is definitely a long-term investment that you're going to make, and you need to plan to be there for a long time because the next people coming along are going to have the exact same appraisal problem. So what you find is, maybe an appraiser looks in a 5-mile radius or even 10-mile radius. They look at separate guest quarters or in-law suites. And they can see that, okay, all things being equal, houses are selling for X amount per square foot for the main structure. These outbuildings seem to add a value of about $100,000 on top of the normal square footage for these other houses that we're using as sales. The problem is that 10 years ago, that might have been the price to build that house. So that works fine for that other person, but it's not going to work for your build. It's going to cost you more than you're going to get in value to build that house, okay? So be aware of that, because if you're going into it with the idea of the minimum square footage, you need to understand your equity, how much you might need to have out of pocket, how much you need to plan for out of pocket. Secondly, a lot of people have parents that are moving and they're going to be selling their house. And then that same person has their house that they want to sell. You know, it's important that you consider it. There are some ways to avoid getting hit with all that debt. But I would just say that as much as I get requested for people to stay in their existing house and try to build with a minimum down to start, then sell their existing house, put more down later. That's the ideal for most people. With multi-generational housing, you're going to have enough challenges. Most of my clients have had to sell their house or houses that they're going to use because of the equity problem. Unless you've got access to a lot of cash, it is not likely going to be a situation where minimum down payment is going to work, okay? So again, you want to get pre-qualified for what you think it's going to cost, maybe a little extra because there's a lot more surprises. It's a much more unique build. I would be prepared that you may need to sell, one or both of your houses to have the equity to move forward into the construction phase, because on these construction loans, you've got to make your down payment up front. So if your build was going to be $1 million, and let's say it appraised for $800,000, that means right off the bat, you might have $200,000 more dollars that you've got to put into that project that you weren't expecting. So make your planning with your bank early. Make your plan. Again, if you're paying cash, no problem. But if you're building the house and you've got houses that you've got to either sell and you're moving in family members, it's very important that you understand how the banking, financing, how the appraisal is going to affect that build. If you have questions, I will have my contact information down in the description below. I'd appreciate you subscribing and following along. If you have questions, reach out to me directly. I will try to keep up with the comments and everything like that, but most of them are just going to be junk mail and stuff. So just reach out to me directly and I'd be glad to help you. Again, I'm the Cowtownbanker. If you have questions on multi-generational housing, I have handled it and I can guide you through it. Even if you don't like what I say, it will be accurate. I will look forward to hearing from you.